Here's what we know so far. So the first big thing with respect to the proposal is the threshold. What was 100 originations in each of the prior 2 calendar year ends will now be 1,000. So you can start planning that party if you're well underneath that. And that 1,000, that threshold is actually going to be harder to get to than you would otherwise think because of some things that I'll share with you here in just a moment. So the 100 threshold's going up to 1,000. Okay, at least as the proposed state. The mandatory compliance date, the date is now going to be January 1, 2028. You're going to count originations in 26 and 27. No more tiers. Everybody that's going to be in goes all at the same time. The other interesting thing about that date is it puts us well in advance of the last 6 months of the current administration term, which means it's tougher to move things, change things once we cross over the go threshold. So that January 1st, 2028 date is a rather important date for those of you that will be subject to the rule. They also lowered the small business threshold. What was 5 million or less now becomes 1 million or less. I'm not sure how much of an impact that's going to have as far as the number of small businesses that were in that range of 1 million to 5 million, but it certainly lessens the pool that you're going to have access to in reaching that 1,000 origination threshold to determine whether or not you're in. So that makes it even tougher to get there. But the biggest thing relative to the 1,000 threshold is the additional exclusions. Now, the first one isn't a big one. They included a small dollar threshold of 1,000. I'm not sure how many business purpose loans you're doing for $1,000 or less, so not a very big deal for that one. The other one, though, is agricultural transactions, and it's both for counting and reporting. So if you end up being subject to 1071, you will not report any agricultural applications. You also will not count them towards the originations to get you to 1,000. Now, I know some of you aren't primarily agricultural banks, and so it doesn't help you a whole lot, but there are a lot of them in this country that are agricultural based, and that's a large majority of your business purpose loan applications and your business purpose origination. So that's going to lessen the chance that you get to that 1,000 threshold, some of you that are in that range anyway. So that's a big one, the agricultural transactions. I do think it needs some help with the way it was proposed. Diane and I have already identified some narrow scenarios where we're like, that doesn't quite seem to fit the exemption as written. So they've got some work to do there, but I think the intention is to exclude all agricultural transactions, both applications for reporting and originations for counting. The data field. So those of you that are left subject to 1071 based on that threshold, they did lessen the data fields, but not by much. What was 20 data fields, not data points, okay, data fields, what was 20 now becomes 15. What disappears? Number of workers, application method, application recipient, denial reasons, and then the big one was the pricing data. That had a lot of data points, okay, relative to the information that was reported, but it was considered one data field, but a lot of information there, that's gone. So 15 data fields remain and a lot of information. So still we have 75% of the information that was required to be reported from a data field standpoint. What disappeared beyond that? References to anything that is LGBTQI+. That's all gone. You won't find that anywhere. And then the sex/gender just becomes sex again, and it's male or female only, or do not wish to provide. There's no write-in, there's no any extras there. It's male or female, that's it, just like we know with traditional Reg B and HMDA. So the other thing is then, based on that, would be the 2-page data collection form. That's going to get a bit of a facelift, but largely it's going to stay exactly as it was before, other than the references to LGBTQI+ and the gender being something other than male or female. It's going to be exactly the same. You'll still have to do principal ownership collection on up to 4 individuals. None of that changes. So that form will look a little different, but relatively the information is going to be the same. So what's not changing? The term application, oral or written request, stays the same. That complicated HMDA exclusion, I'm not even going to go there today, but they didn't touch that. They left it exactly the way it was. So if you're non-HMDA bank, and I think that's going to become less because of the threshold, the height of that, the 1,000. But still, you're going to need to know what's covered by HMDA and what's not, because 1071 will grab that if it's not otherwise excluded. The majority of the data fields, like I said, 15 out of 20 stay. They're not going anywhere. The firewall requirements stay intact exactly as originally written, other than the 2-page notice is going to change. And then the record keeping, that whole separate storage thing, that stays the same. So that's the kind of the big things that caught our attention so far. A couple of other things here before I close out. There are several comments in the proposal that go a little something like this. We're leaving the door open and we're going to let the bigger financial institutions go first, and we may come back and repropose to include smaller institutions down the road. So it's not like, hey, you're out today and you're out forever. Now, I think under this administration, we're not going to see them pull in smaller financial institutions, but leaving the door open leaves it to down the road. If things go the way they should, they could pull smaller financial institutions back in this. There's actually more than a few comments related to that in the proposal. So they left the door open there. We'll see what happens. We're still working through this, trying to identify the majors. We've got a 1071 membership group meeting next Wednesday. We just got the materials sent over to Kyla for our team to proof. We'll get those out the door. Those of you members, those of you that aren't, you can still join that. We're going to do a deeper dive on this thing next Wednesday. And then there will be a 2-hour webinar on December 3rd. By the way, if you're part of the membership group, any month that you're part of the membership group, you also get all the webinars related to that topic at no extra cost. So if you're not a member and you want to try it out for a month, December would be a great month. You're going to get access to that 2-hour webinar where we'll get even more of the details fleshed out based on what we learn between now and then.